Looking for office space and not sure what to look for or how to plan for your growth? Did you know that a tenant advisor works for you and advocates for your best interests and doesn't even add any additional cost to you? Learn what a tenant advisor can do to help you get the right space for your business. Tune into this week's episode of Stand Out and Grow to learn more. I'm Kat Ramirez, your host of Stand Out and Grow. I want to help your business stand out, survive, succeed, and grow. Building your business is really hard, and knowing what marketing and advertising tools you need to help you become successful is extremely confusing. After 30 years of working with thousands of businesses, I am here to help you make good business decisions. I want to help you understand the programs that are available to you so that you can stand out, survive, succeed, and grow. So let's get started. This is episode 15 of Stand Out and Grow. Bang! My guest today is a tenant advisor who works with business owners and chief operations officers to advocate for them when you are searching for office space. He works with all kinds of businesses for a variety of needed office space. The cool thing about a tenant advisor is there's no additional costs on your end when you hire one. Hear about how working with a tenant advisor protects you and any undue expenses you might incur in the long run. Please join me in welcoming Rocky Hofstetter, Vice President at Tenant Advisors, Inc. Welcome, Rocky. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Kat. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so for those of you who are tuning in, Rocky is here. He's going to be talking to us about leasing an office for your business, whether you're small, you're big, if you're corporate, right? Any size, right?
Absolutely. And that could include a purchase too. We go through the whole due diligence, behind that.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah. And so the reason I have Rocky here is because when, and I'm just going to give a little background about my situation, Rocky, so that, and you can interject as I give this, because when I first became an entrepreneur and I worked out of my home and I discovered that didn't work. It didn't work, and I had to get an office to get away, okay? Uh-huh. And so when I did my research, I wanted a particular place. And so I just did my own personal research. I didn't know what to do. I looked on Craigslist. I did the stupid crap that probably everybody else does, okay?
Sure.
And then I found an office in the downtown 3rd Ward. Okay, so here are the things that I ran into that I didn't think of because I don't know any better. And if I had hired someone like you, and you can explain your services later,
sure,
I probably wouldn't run it into any of this stuff, okay? So first off, I was in the 3rd Ward. Okay, so the price was right. Parking was a bitch. I could not find any parking, and it cost me an arm and a leg to get parking for my employees. Okay?
Oh yeah, huge issue.
Secondly, when I got into the office space, I didn't understand me investigating internet, Wi-Fi, all of the, and my business is all online. I depend on it. And I made the assumption that this business, this office space could accommodate my business, and it didn't. And we had regular home Wi-Fi, or whatever you want to call it, service, internet service. It always was disrupting. It was so weak. And I called so many places to try to get a T1, and nobody could do it because the building was old. And I was like, oh my God. So I was screwed. So basically those were the biggest things for me. And I was stuck because I signed a year lease, right? So do you want to talk about some of those things that I ran into?
Sure, Kat. And I don't know where to start. I love you, but you did about 10, 20 things wrong that I could pick out just in that scenario?
Well, and then probably start with why someone should hire you. You know
yeah, sure. The obvious thing, and you mentioned just going online and finding a space. Like we always say, finding an actual space is not rocket science. Anybody can do that. On the commercial real estate side, we use something called CoStar, which is it's kind of like the MLS of residential for commercial real estate. But as you mentioned, there's online services. There's numerous sites at this point to go and find some spaces and kind of do some searching yourself. It just always comes back for the entrepreneur. At what point is it more effective for your business, and you're trying to run a business and do a million things to not only find a space. You mentioned 5 or 6 points that just to run the business properly. So is that worth a best use of your time, or hiring somebody to help you go through the process and then create a process that is going to lead to success and clarity in what you're signing up for, right?
So. Right. And so just for anybody who's listening and doesn't understand your business model or what it's called, what is the official title, and you know what I mean? Like,
So
explain the background of that.
Sure. So Tenant Advisors, we are real estate brokers. We're licensed brokers, but we always say we're kind of hybrid consultants as well. But primarily, what we are is something called a tenant representative. And so in the real estate industry, there's buyers and sellers, right? And so we concentrate, or our business solely is focused on the tenants looking for space, right? Looking for office, commercial space, or to purchase, right? You would ask next question, why does that matter? Why would I need that? What's the difference, right? In the real estate world, there's a lot of big firms you've seen in town. I'm definitely not going to mention them on this, on the air. Right. But you see the signs, right? If you call those signs, those are great companies. They represent those buildings for owners,
Gotcha.
Right? And so those representatives are representing the owners.
Yeah.
You can imagine the best interest of owners.
Yeah.
They'll probably be happy to represent you, but are you getting in real estate the full, what we call the fiduciary value that we can give? And we argue you can, unless you're only playing one side of the fence. And
right.
And there's all kinds of bad things that happen when you get a broker or representative playing both sides of the fence, right? And actually most brokerage industries, what we call dual representation is outlawed. Actually in I think I can't remember how many states now, 8 or 9 states in the US, it's actually outlawed.
Wow.
And there's a lot of regulations around it even when you can. And so I guess the bottom line is, it's not in your best interest. Having somebody that's really fighting for your best interest is really pretty obvious in that regard.
Okay. So in my situation, you would have done an analysis or met with me to find my nuances that I needed, right? So that when you're researching and searching the best ideal space for me, I wouldn't look back and think, oh shit, I gotta pay. I mean, I was probably paying equal to what I was paying in rent in parking fees.
Oh gosh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And I didn't know that.
So this is definitely something we like to talk about up front. We do part of our value add or value proposition is really a consultative service, and up front talking about the business and business needs, and really being an advocate and consultant first.
Right.
Then understanding what kind of space you're going to need and looking at space. And you see that a lot of business owners or tenants do the opposite. They start looking for space, then they're backtracking to understand what their headcount is going to be, things like that, functionally how they're going to grow over the next year, 2, 3, 4. Do they have a budget over the next several years? How does that align to headcount?
Yep.
And those kind of questions. So helping through that, and then I think getting to the business needs specific that you talked about, like parking and internet. Those things when we go through our process, there's discovery. There's a certain point where we do discovery, not to talk like a lawyer, but flushing those things out and getting that, before you get to really even an LOI.
Yep.
So the big thing we always preach.
Wait, before you go. You just said an acronym.
Yep, I did, didn't I?
My people understand this. What is an LOI?
I'm sorry, I was going to try not to do that today, and I did it. I hate that when people do that, right? So LOI, letter of intent.
Okay.
And if we had more time today, I would go through our full process. But really the idea is kind of upfront, what we do is a needs analysis, talking through with clients to understand, right, their needs, and from that, helping do some basic space planning to understand what they need, and then, going out looking for options. Then we put together an RFP.
What is an RFP?
Which is a request for proposal, another acronym. Sorry, just yelled. And from that we would get pricing and some of the things you asked about. That's kind of the discovery phase. And from that, we would kind of nail down business terms.
Okay.
Understanding those business terms in what we call an LOI, or a letter of intent.
Yes.
Before you get the lease in hand. And I think the only reason I'm bringing this up is another no-no in the process is that we see tenants run to get that lease in hand, or their existing business, they're in an existing location and they're really going to negotiate, so they get their lease and they have a couple weeks left, and now I'm really going to negotiate with my landlord. They already know you can't leave, you don't have time, you didn't start the process early enough, which is, again, if I'm going to preach anything today, is starting the process early. Boy, that was a lot to load in on that one question.
No, I think that's great, because I think you bring up a very, very valid process of structure, because it makes someone think about their business like the next couple of years. And nobody really thinks that, especially a new entrepreneur, first time going into an office, they're not thinking that. They're thinking, I need to get an office because I can't get the hell out of my house,
Absolutely.
Or if they've grown really, really fast, they're like, I got to get out of here. We're busting at the seams.
Yes.
And we got to get out, So they're not really thinking the long term. They're thinking immediate. I need an immediate thing, immediate solution. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think, so we can talk through kind of those clients that we work with that are in that situation, but we try to help structure deals and help clients think about today and tomorrow, right? So things like, okay, our headcount is X today, but we think over the next couple of years it could double. Well, maybe we're doing a shorter term, a 2 to 3 year deal, and option to expand at that point instead of oversizing it day one. And there's all kinds of nuances to that, but trying to help through that strategy with a client is we think very valuable.
Okay, and you're holding their hand and walking them through the process. And
that's a great analogy, Kat. Because we'd like to say it's a white glove service. So our process, we would like to say, is a similar process that the big anchor tenants that you see downtown, the big guys would go through, and we're doing that for kind of mid-market tenants, right? And so not only that, some of the consultative input and approach that we go through with clients can be helpful. Not only kind of real early stage, right, in their business. So as and a lot of times we might meet and go through the process, and they're not quite really ready for our service, and maybe we direct them to some of the short-term type Regis's of the world, Ward 4 here in Milwaukee. You might have heard of WeWorks in Chicago. Those type places can be great places for companies that aren't quite ready to have their own full-time space, multi-year leases.
Right. So because you've worked with so many business, you'll have a better perspective on, is this a situation that needs an office? I'll give you a good example, and I think we kind of chatted about this before. I have a client that was brand new entrepreneur, brand new, and had a business coach. And I'm not sure where the business coach fell to play or played in with her business, because I think at some point you're not that, but you're something else that adds to the mix, right?
Yes.
And so she got into a nice, huge studio, in New York. And I'm not going to say who the client is, but a very nice, huge studio. And no client business, brand new. Do you know what I mean? No, nothing. And so now that she's in there with, this big lease, right, month to month to month, and she's got to generate the client base that she did not have. And and so, I'm curious to know your feedback, but at the end of the day, here's what happened. She was in there, not even a year. She has to move out because she can't swallow that lease amount every month.
That's too bad.
And so, so that's why I think talking to someone like you that's in the best interest of the person, you're not in it to make money. You're in it to help them so that they don't waste money. Mm-hmm. Their business doesn't fail because they're drowning in rent.
Yeah, that's a
Lease.
huge cost, obviously. And yeah, that early on, if it's a 1 or 2 person firm, we typically would say, hey, you're probably best option is looking at one of the short-term places.
Right.
WeWorks would have been great in New York. She could have done a month-to-month or something to that. One of those
something
type places.
similar to that, where it's just a small office.
And once they get to 5, 6, 7 people, the cost, it's pretty obvious the value at a certain point where you're going to pay a premium to have flexibility around term. And it's kind of weighing that option. Once the business is stabilized and you can kind of start to see the light, so to speak, and you're going to know kind of when that balance takes place. So, for us, we say 8 to 10 people is probably a starting point for businesses that really want to now look at an option, or they're going to scale their headcount over several years.
Right.
And they can justify it, and at that point it makes sense.
Yeah, and then the other facet to it is you also help people in the reverse, right? People that have been...
Yeah, it's good and bad, I guess. But yeah, I mean, that's a great thing to bring up. I mean, what we call like an efficiency play, where, they're in a lease or they're trying to wind down the business, but they still need space. They're trying to maybe retool the business. They're scaling it down, and they're going to scale back up. So the businesses don't always go up, right? Sometimes they go down, and we get involved in both sides of that process, and we think add value.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily think scaling down is a bad thing, because a lot of people are working from home.
Sure.
I know a couple companies and they were in Chicago, by the way, that were like downtown Chicago, had beautiful office space, real nice, big. Yeah. They scaled back because they moved all their people remote. So that, and then he told me, he was like, that saved us $7,000 a month.
Sure.
It might have been more than that, but I'm just being, but so they were so happy, and they said, you know what we did? We gave that money back to our people and bonuses. And I was like, that is cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's not get carried away, Kat, because, we do have a business here. Let's not have everybody doing that. No, I'm kidding. No, there's value. And I think to your point, part of the, the analysis and upfront consulting we provide, talking through headcount.
Right.
And now the dynamics of businesses where you do have, you might have remote employees. You might have a national company, but you just need a remote satellite to your point. And how can we be efficient with the space?
Right. And I'm not trying to remove your position, because at the end of the day, here's the thing. I'm in an office space. I'm going to go up for renewal. That you still come to play with that, right?
Thanks, Kat. I hope I'm convincing you today.
But you know what I'm saying?
Of course.
You're part of that too.
Yeah, I mean, once we start working with a client, it's a long-term relationship. So we're not in it just to place them in some space and move on. We're there. We hope to be kind of that consultant to them and
you want to see them grow, or you
Absolutely.
want to see them buy their own building, or
Absolutely.
whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
I mean, your position, what you do is not going to go away. I can promise you that.
Yeah.
But so let's talk about some questions that I have, and that I encountered, that I think a lot of people don't realize that they need to think about, because when I talked to my insurance company, because I had to get insurance.
Oh, this is a great one you're bringing up, by the way.
Oh, okay.
I just went through this with a client. So this is a fantastic question.
Yeah. So I had to get insurance, and I was like, I don't know where to get insurance. Okay. And I went online and looked, but the insurance company, when they gave me an analysis, a questionnaire, a lot of those questions, I was like, I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so walk me through that, because I think it talked about like square foot. Is it square foot TI or something else? Where, you know what I mean? Like all these analogies, like it happened.
Oh, a ton. And and I got caught throwing a few acronyms out today myself, but there's a lot of verbiage to go through, more reason to have somebody help you through it, right? And even from a pricing standpoint, how different owners will price, there's nuances within that. So like part of our process is really, we say we like to create leverage. We look at multiple, options for a client. We try to find a few to kind of play off each other, right? And create that leverage. And then we'll put together a financial analysis that kind of gives that apples to apples, like what's going on there, right?
Yep.
You mentioned the insurance.
Yep.
Yeah. So for a new business, that can be daunting.
Yep.
I'm not going to claim to be the insurance expert, but I'll give another acronym, COI, which is Certificate of Insurance.
Yep.
So you might have had to provide that as you got in. There was fine print in that lease that talked about you needed all this policy, amounts, a lot of times owners just put cookie cutter policy information in and they don't care. They'll have you sign that.
Right.
And it's really for a company 3, 4, 5, 10 times the size of your company, right?
Yeah.
And so you can imagine companies getting through a lease that really kind of didn't fine tooth, that lease, getting caught with that. Now they have to give a certificate of insurance, COI. And they go, oh, well, we don't have, that's like not even close to what we thought we needed. And that's could be a huge cost and a big hidden, risk or cost that they didn't think about or account for, right?
Right. Okay.
Does that answer that?
Oh yeah, it totally does. Because I don't think a lot of people understand that when you are leasing, that is incumbent on you. You have to get it. You have to show it. You have to prove it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I ran into this building, and I'm in a warehouse building in case anybody's listening and doesn't understand or see where I'm at. And in my warehouse building, I had to call the electrical inspector, all the inspectors. I had to pay for that. I had to get them all here.
Wow.
The building doesn't do that.
Wow.
So I had to get the whole, I think it was four inspectors.
Wow. So that was part of your lease. That was probably.
And I had to pay for it. I had to schedule it. I had to do it all before I moved in.
Wow.
And I don't think people understand that because that's what the city, right? That's what the city.
Sure.
And that was for them to say the electrical was okay. It was like if I was building a home or something. You know what I mean?
So that's not something. Yeah, we would have seen that. That can be definitely onerous on the.
But you would have known that, and you would have interpreted to me.
We definitely hope we would have flushed that out earlier than later. Yeah, those surprises aren't fun, right?
But someone like me not knowing and then coming into this thinking, is this what everybody does when they lease an office?
And that brings up a good point. I should preference. We are real estate brokers. We're not attorneys, right? So we're not. When I say that, we're a lot of times we're really helping negotiate business terms up front. We're not negotiating lease or changing language. And actually, we're really good referral sources to attorneys because, if our tenants don't have one, we'll at the acronym I use, the LOI or letter of intent. That's a lot of times when an attorney gets involved for a tenant, and we'll work with them as they find, kind of do their due diligence over their lease. And
the other thing that came up in my building, and this is my second one, was if I put any fixtures in here, they stay. Is that typical, or you know what I mean? Like I had to hardwire network, put my network in that stays. Yeah. If I buy heating, it's a heated building. It's not AC, and so if I put AC in, I would have had to leave it.
Wow.
So anything I built in, I leave. It's property now of the building.
Interesting. To answer your question, I'm not going to comment if it's common. It's that's one of the things every business owner, or I should say building owner rather, might have their own nuance to their lease agreements. So none of them are cookie cutter. And they all have different little quirks to them, so to speak, right?
I didn't learn about it though until after I already signed the lease, unfortunately, because what happened was we have a really good heater. Oh my God, it's like generators loud. You know what I mean? It's pumps. It's like industrial. But then there's no air. So we have lots of windows. So I was originally going to buy a central air unit. Huh. And then when I weighed out the cost, and then I found out when I told them, I said, hey, I'm going to put in an air unit. Is that cool? And then what happens when I leave? Do you guys pay me? Can we take it off the rent? Oh no, it's ours, Kat.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, hell no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, right, of course.
So I was like, I bought portables because I can take them with me. I can resell them. I can do whatever I want. Yeah. Yeah,
that's, the surprises are never fun for any business owner, right? No. Especially when it comes to anything, including leasing space or your current space, right?
But these are things that you'll pull out for a business owner when you're working with them, and if they had their eye on this building,
definitely.
You'd be talking to
definitely.
them.
We obviously try to make sure there's no surprises. Right. I think it just gets back to my point of preaching, start the process early. Right. And what does that mean? I don't think I was specific, but we say at least 6 to 12 months out to really sit down, have a strategic discussion around kind of the needs before you go forward. For larger clients, it could be 12 to 24 months, really. And why not? Because make time your friend and not your enemy, so to
Right.
speak. And the earlier you start the process, either your current landlord knows that you might have other options. When you wait too late
Yep.
in the game, it really just reduces your options. Things get sloppy. You miss things in the process, and to your point, then you might have some surprises in the end.
Yeah. Because the other one is, and even though I thought I would have learned from the first time, with the whole internet crap, with the first building, this one, we had a T1, so I did know that.
Yes.
But it was not wired for my network. So
Oh yeah.
So I had to hire someone to come in and wire so that everybody had a safe, secure network.
And that's not cheap. That
No,
can
it's
be
not.
a big
Oh my
cost.
God.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was not cheap. No.
So yes, usually when we go through the process, we obviously vet out. You mentioned parking again. Things like what do they have in the building?
Right.
That brings up another thing. Just even on just understanding the whole picture of what you're negotiating in buildings. Things like what's going on with that building. Is it for sale? As that landlord owned it a long time. Who are the other tenants in that building? There's a lot of dynamics to who and where you're going into, and we hope to provide a little value and look into that a little bit as well in the process. So you want to have the more information, as the better prepared, and maybe the more leverage you can have.
Absolutely. Oh my God. And so the other thing for my situation is when I got into my first building, it was a year to year, like 1 year, year to year. When I got into this building, it was a 2-year escalating. So my lease was started here and then it escalated the next year.
Yes.
Okay. And so I don't know what's typical. I mean, because both of them were different. You know what I mean?
And again, there's a lot of nuances in different buildings, hence why we try to.
So either or is a typical thing, no matter what.
And you could have all kinds of nuances into how that's negotiated, and you could have had a lower base rate, and then there was larger percent increases over multi-years. But it's very common to have, the first base year is the base year, and several percent increase per year on that lease as you go forward.
Okay.
Everything's negotiable again, and just it's and then what is the market, and we hope to add that value through the process, which is here's what we see in the market.
Yep.
And then we add a little bit of, I think, on top of that, being in multi-markets, where we're here in Milwaukee, obviously, and in Chicago. So we work in both markets. And there's nuances to both markets, as you can imagine.
So let's talk about that, because I think it would be interesting for people to know and understand it. I think it would relate to our client that was in New York, and maybe she could have did better in Brooklyn. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Or in another area of New York instead of downtown Manhattan, where she was. And so let's talk about that in reference to like Milwaukee and Chicago, because you see all of this.
Yeah, definitely. We were started in Schaumburg, suburb of Chicago, but I'm here in Milwaukee, grew up in Milwaukee, and so obviously being in this market. But Milwaukee's changed. I mean, you've seen a lot of change here, and the reason we're here is because we see it as a lot more dynamic market. You have a lot of, with the startup world and just in general, there's a lot of growth, a lot of building growth as well, and there hasn't been a good, we think just the need to have our service here and add that value. So seeing kind of what happens here in Milwaukee versus Chicago. There's definitely quirks, obviously from a cost standpoint. Downtown Chicago to downtown Milwaukee, you can see 40-50% increase, to even double.
Wow.
I had a retail client that we were looking on Michigan Avenue, and I think it was $200 a square foot. That's pretty expensive, right?
Compared to what in Milwaukee?
And it could be 30 plus in the Premier here. I don't know what the exact Premier, but you can see the difference. I mean, in average, you're seeing downtown rents in the 20s here to 30. In Chicago, it could be 40 to 50 or plus. So that gives you for your average office client. So a huge difference in cost. And, we've seen businesses take a long look at Milwaukee and getting across the border and building a business here versus down there because of that. And I can see the benefit there, because I think for this area, Milwaukee's trying really hard to bring businesses here.
it's progressive, it's growing, it's really trying to support, new opportunities, new businesses, and like you said, startups, and it's really making a serious effort. Okay, so let's talk about security deposit.
Yeah, oh boy, yeah.
Because that is a big deal, because you're talking about big leases now, right? So what is the typical?
Boy, you can't narrow me in on that one. I guess I can explain
Give me
this
best
way.
case scenario and worst.
Sure. So it's very tough for an entrepreneur. I'll be honest. I mean, when a new company is started, there's not a lot of business to go on. I mean, so obviously, typically to go through the process, part of the final process is, yes, how do we secure that piece? And if you don't have multi-years of financials behind you, a lot of times they're wanting entrepreneurs or business owners to sign some kind of a personal guarantee potentially. How do we do that? Or multi-month security deposit up front.
Okay.
So how do we get around that, right, is the question. So I think part of the process is, letting our clients know up front that having good, financials that they can provide at a certain point in the process is going to be needed. And really it's in their best interest, because the cleaner that is, usually the easier it is to get through the security piece. So, multi-month security. So if somebody was looking at starting a business, 2-3 month security deposit isn't crazy. Obviously we try to negotiate, what we can. And and there's so many variables depending on the business and size and things, but, just making sure you have financials, I think is a big thing that you can share.
Because at the end of the day, what I do know is everything is negotiable.
Right.
It's just having the right person negotiating or having the right parameters in place.
Absolutely right. And timing, I said again, is a big part of that. If you get stuck, then you don't have much leverage. And we said, I don't know if I, really said this yet, but we'd like to say that hiring a tenant rep doesn't cost you more money, but if you didn't have somebody, it probably will. Because actually, we don't necessarily directly charge for our services, right? So, as one of our clients is placed in the building, we get a fee off of that from the owner, even though we represent the best interest in the tenant. There's a fee that's on any of those commercial buildings that are for lease. Just thought I'd let that know. So
and that's good, because I was going to ask you how that works, so that people have some kind of peace of mind that that what they're paying is not like that you have to get a percentage, like with the real estate market. You know what I mean? Because if you think about my business model, advertising. When I buy major media. Okay, so like if you came to me and you bought TV. Okay, TV has to pay me a percentage of that. The client doesn't.
Awesome.
So it works the same
very similar.
way.
It
works the same way. And so whenever I'm negotiating rates for a client, it's major media, TV, radio, print, billboard, that's like a normal, they have to pay me, not the client. So I get that. I personally get that.
And we can all then relate to your startup to mid-sized companies, how important that can be. They already have enough
on their shoulders. They don't need another expense added to the mix. Okay, so let's talk about utilities, because I know some places like this it's included. I've never had to pay utilities, I'll tell you.
So there's another whole piece of the puzzle, right? And you'll see things like your triple net lease rate.
That's the word I want, because there's all these acronyms like
so you have your triple net, then you have gross, then you have modified gross. I don't know, and we won't have time to go through every single one of these here probably, but the point is, all the more reason to have somebody help you through the process and provide an apples to apples and understand what you're really going to ultimately pay, because besides your base rent or you have something called CAM and tax. Here's another acronym for you. Common area maintenance is CAM, which you would see, and taxes, right? So
is that another fee on top of?
It is on top of the base rent. And then so you have that, which also can have a variable component to it, because taxes can change every year. The maintenance of a building can change. So there's a variable component that people don't really understand how that works. And they can have pass-throughs and changes every year to what they thought was, I thought I was only going to pay X. And you mentioned before the increases on rent. So there's things that they, unless they really understand some of these things, they can have some surprises as they go on in their space. You mentioned utilities, which I'm trying to get to, sorry.
Okay.
So, sometimes you'll see where the utilities are included in that price, and obviously sometimes not. And so what's included, I've seen, well, electric's included, HVAC is not.
Right.
Sometimes HVAC is on the tenant.
Okay.
100%. Maintenance can be on the, you could have HVAC maintenance unit.
Yep.
They try to put on the tenant.
Okay.
So those are some of the things, not just utilities. And, utilities can be, depending on the size of the business, a significant additional expense, as you know, right?
Totally. And again, it goes back to what you're talking about, no surprises.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it talks about, at the end of the day, is you want to be very tuned into what you're getting into, because once you sign this lease, once you get in the building, there's no turning back.
No, that's right. And once you sign the lease, your negotiating is over until that lease is up.
Right.
So
at what point do you advise, I'm sure you do, people between buying and leasing? Like,
That's a great question. Yeah. And, there's no rule of thumb. I would say that we do that due diligence with clients. Mm-hmm. And, for everyone that looks at it, there might be, be 1 out of 20 that purchase, or maybe it's 1 out of 10 or 15. But point is, companies have to be at a certain point in their life cycle, if you would call it that, where they understand maybe the headcount's at a certain point, and they're stable, they're not going to decline, they're not going to grow too much, and the space will work, and they're going to do it for the long term, because you're talking a 10-20 year commitment probably.
Right.
Not a lot of businesses can put that time horizon to work for them.
Right.
So you can imagine, so it is a certain niche that ultimately purchases, and at that point it's it definitely is a very advantageous thing to do for many reasons, as you can imagine.
Yeah. So is there an industry you're not helping with? Are you pretty much helping with all industries?
Good question. Yeah. We're primarily any office space. So any corporate client, could be tech to professional services to anything. I won't leave anybody out. We'll do some crossover into what we would call flex or light industrial.
Okay.
And even there's a lot of crossover into retail space that might also be sort of business needs as well. So if that answers your question. So I think for us, the value is, helping clients that might have some unique needs and not sure, and sometimes they have multiple locations to fit their needs overall. You could have a warehouse or office or flex space in a retail downtown, and you could have multi-office locational things. We think adding value, a company that might have a space in Madison, Milwaukee, and Chicago. How do they work through that? So I think, there's definitely value there for us to help somebody like that.
And at the end of the day, if someone talks to you, and let's say you go through analysis and stuff, there's no risk, right? There's no loss, there's no risk talking to you and getting your perspective and working with you. But then, I don't know, something happens and, they walk away.
Oh yeah, that's part of the business. We, obviously we hope people are respectful of everybody's time, but there's a time to go through the due diligence, and sometimes it's not going to work. But once companies are at a certain point, having this discussion is something they're going to really need.
Right.
And we hope to add value there.
Right, and that's my point.
And a lot of times we've had clients that we went through the discussion, and I said we will refer them to another place, right. And then 2-3 years later they call us. We hope they remember that we tried to help them, and when they got to the right point, we think we were the logical next call, and so Yeah,
because my point is I'm trying to eliminate any objection for someone to pick up the phone and call, because it's again, there's no risk as far as money out to them. There's nothing really that they're going to lose to pick up the phone and utilize a service like yours.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah, I think time on their own, if they don't probably have someone helping them, a lot of times time, and as you said, a lot of surprises and money on the back end. Is what we see.
Time was a big deal for me. I had a partner at the time, and we looked for 6 months, and it disrupted my work because I had to take time every day, and he scheduled the walkthroughs, and I was like, I don't have time for this. Do you know what I mean?
Or can eat up a lot of time, as you find out, right?
Yeah, and so because we went through a lot of space, and we looked and looked and looked and looked. So I can understand the time part, and I can understand help removing any of the surprises, because once I get in, I just want to get back to work.
Sure.
I don't want to worry about all the other crap, And for me to hotwire my team was a disruption. It was it was a disruption from, I think, 2 weeks. That they had to come in and wire everything.
Oh, sure. And yeah, that brings up something, disruption. If a tenant or client is wanting to move in a new space, I think allocating for that process, and then the move in and potential build out, and making it seamless and really helping them through that is a big deal.
And you just said something, and we need to mention it really quick.
Not another acronym.
No, build out. I don't think people understand what build out is, because I didn't know it when I was looking at some places. Well,
there's a lot of great space in Milwaukee for tenants, but doesn't mean it all fits your needs, right? It's not all perfect. It might be close, and then there's potentially some construction or work that needs to be done to get it to where you want, or it's really outdated from 1982, and maybe that's your style, maybe it's not, or whatever. Not to knock 1982, but so potential build out around structured into the lease, and that's part of kind of the process we put you through, and to see if we can structure that into a deal that makes sense for a client, and maybe you do get a nice build out and new fresh space in an old building, but it's it fits exactly what your business needs, right? And that can be very important operationally. As you know, right? And so designing something and thinking through operationally, what's efficient, and then functionally what makes sense as you grow, right? And so that all kind of fits into that puzzle.
And I love that this accidentally came out, because I've had some clients where the build out was included, because the tenant, is it the tenant or the lease?
The owner
was dying to get rid of the space. So they built out.
Absolutely.
And then I've had clients that had to pay themselves.
Yes.
Because there was a demand for the space. I mean, I've seen them all.
You're right. And it can go both ways. We typically try to early on, well, depending on the client, of course, but yes, the build out piece is one part, but in the equation of time, you sign a lease and now there's build out, that's another 12 to 14 weeks before you can move in. So accounting for that kind of time, you can see where 6 months is not.
Oh yeah, no, you have to plan for
that. And that would account for half of that time. Yeah. And so not only that 6 months, but making sure, you mentioned wiring, making sure it's set up so when you do move your business in, you're ready to go and the phones aren't down and there's no, no disruption to your business.
Right, exactly. Okay, Rocky. I love this. This is good information. Is there one nugget? Is there one thing that you can leave in people's mind that if they're looking at space, and let's say that they're stubborn and they don't want to call you and they're doing it, or is there one tip or thing that you want to leave with people? You know what I mean? For them to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned again, start the process earlier than you thought, and making owners compete for your business is important. Understanding the whole picture of the buildings and the market. Be willing to walk away. Don't be too emotional. This is also something a lot of owners get involved in. So getting your emotion, also having an intermediary or somebody to help you with this, getting your emotions out of it. And yeah, I mean, I could go on, but I hope that, that
great.
helps.
That's great. Okay. So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you? I mean, I'm going to have your contact info in our notes for this podcast, but if they want to, if they're excited, eager to get started, how do they get a hold of you? So
www.tenantadvisors.com is our website.
Okay.
We also have a portal on there where you can fill out information. So if you go, hey, I have 15, 20 people and I have this amount, it gives you kind of a quick space analysis, and we would get that inquiry and we'd be happy to go from there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I'm also on LinkedIn, of course, and I think I can be contacted on LinkedIn.
And how are you listed in LinkedIn, Rocky?
How am I listed? Just by my name, Rocky Hofstetter.
Okay.
And I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I appreciate it, and thank you so much for coming in today. And I love the information. I think it's awesome, and I think we could probably have a conversation about this like on and in more detail, just because there's so much that has to do with this. You know? And I think at the end of the day, if a business was looking at moving or getting into new space, they should look up, someone, either you or someone like you. Oh, definitely. Yeah, selfishly me, but, if at least get help. I mean, we always say have good representation. Absolutely. The joke we'd like to use is, if you were being sued, would you use the other side's attorney? And probably not. You want to get your own and get somebody that's going to fight for you and help you. That. So, yeah. That's a good ending story. Thanks. Thank you so much. And thanks, everybody, for listening. I appreciate it. And have a great day. And you got this.
Automate your sales, marketing, and service on Agile CRM. Easy automated appointment scheduling, one-click calling, call scripts, and voicemail automation on one platform.
Hello. Please leave your message.
Grow your business by tracking your sales progress to stay on track. Try Agile CRM for free. Visit standoutandgrow.com offers page to learn more.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Stand Out and Grow. Check out all the notes and links at www.standoutandgrow.com. I am so thankful to you for helping this show continue to grow. I want to keep producing content that you want to hear, so please leave me some feedback. I look forward to bringing you more resources and information to help your business stand out and grow. Please follow us on social media and make sure you follow this podcast so you can learn more about helping your business stand out, survive, succeed, and grow. Until next time, you got this.